But today we're talking about what to do when tenants want to break your lease, because from time to time, that sort of thing is going to happen. I've got about 8 questions here that we're going to cover during my time live. But if you have a question that you want to share, please share it in the chat. There's James. How's it going? One of our faithful. Good to see you, James. But yes, if you have a question that you want to share and you're interested in having me take a swing at it, I'm happy to address any questions you might have that I can help you with, and look forward to doing that. But as for today's talk, what to do when tenants want to break the lease. So the first thing that I would recommend is to take something like that seriously. Sometimes landlords take the position because they understand what the law says and they understand what their lease says. They take the position that, well, I've got a pretty rock solid lease. You can't go anywhere, so I'm not going to take your request to terminate early seriously. Well, the flaw with that is, while I don't recommend being flimsy with your lease and just letting whoever wants to leave out, when someone seriously wants to go, they're just going to go, and you might miss out on potentially collecting some of the rent, including some settlement portions that you are otherwise entitled to from a tenant who's willing to pay them. So at the very least, I would say, take into consideration what it is they're willing to offer. If they recognize, for example, that you're going to incur some loss that you otherwise are expecting to have gotten in unpaid rent that you're not going to get, and they're willing to pay maybe 2 or 3 months toward those losses, then it might make sense for you to let them go, since they're leaving anyway. This happens, for example, when somebody buys a home. They're not going to stick around and rent your place when they've got a perfectly, brand new home to move into that's all theirs. They also don't care about their rental history because they're not going to be renters anymore. So take these things in consideration, take it seriously, and if someone makes a serious offer, then seriously consider it. However, the counterpoint to that is, don't feel pressured to accept everybody's offer or everyone's demand that you release them from their residential lease. I mean, that's just not good advice either. Just because somebody says they want out, maybe the circumstances change, or maybe they didn't like the place as much as they felt at first. That's not a good enough excuse for you just to let them out because. And so if it's not a serious request and they don't have solid grounds for doing it, then you don't necessarily have to indulge that request, and you can kindly say no. But again, you take the serious ones seriously, and the silly ones you can just disregard. But don't feel like you absolutely have to just because they say so. That's not a real thing under the law, right? So sometimes people get upset. They say, well, I don't like the tile, or the carpet's outdated, and so I'm going to leave. Well, these aren't justifiable reasons to break the lease. But they might say, for example, the plumbing doesn't work, or the roof's got a bunch of leaks. Those probably are good reasons to unilaterally terminate. And so you got to know the condition of your property, and you got to keep it up, and you got to know whether or not what they're asking for or demanding is valid. And so don't just feel pressured just because they mentioned it. They have to have a valid basis for doing it, or they have to make a valid offer for you to even consider it. So those are the first 2 points. Number 3, if you are going to consider it, you always want to figure out what is a reasonable amount for you to collect from them based on your market. And so if for example, you're in the middle of July and you're already getting calls from people who are interested, even though you haven't listed your property, it's not going to take you very long, so long as the house is not in disrepair. It's not going to take you very long to find a new tenant. And so you might say, look, if you're willing to pay, 1 additional month in rent beyond where you're going to stay, and then I'm going to hold that deposit as potentially additional sums in case I go more than 30 days before I find a qualified applicant, then maybe that works for you. But I wouldn't ever take less than 1 full month plus the deposit, because you might find that although you anticipated it being quick, maybe it's not. Maybe that first applicant doesn't end up, actually coming through, and you got to go through another round of applications before you're able to find somebody suitable. So at least 1 month plus a security deposit. That's probably a fair if the market is hot. If the market simply isn't, talk to people around you. How long is it taking to fill vacancies? If it's taking 3 or 4 months, then it might be reasonable for you to ask for 3 or 4 months in your particular market. So you always want to be aware of the market conditions. I mean, why let somebody out if you're doing them a favor? You're just going to lose money in the process. Make sure that you are well guarded against, the market reality. Make sure that if you're going to modify your lease, and you still got 8 months left, but you're going to let them out in 2, and make sure you do this in writing, because nothing's worse than people fighting over oral modification terms, which really aren't even enforceable, except that if they relied on your oral agreement or your oral terms to their detriment, you might have a claim against you because of terms that were exchanged that ended up, again, resulting in harm to your tenant. So every time you're going to, propose modifications to your lease, whether it's early termination or not, make sure those proposed modifications are in writing.